On this episode, I'm joined by Kaylan Gonzalez, who's an artist and a holistic health practitioner. And we're going to speak about mental health, losing identity, and coming back to our true self and our true nature through breath, through nature, and through really just finding and exploring who we really are. So hi Kaylan, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming all the way from England as well for this conversation. I really appreciate that. One of the interesting things that we spoke about on the phone when we spoke was like this idea of how we place our identity in our achievements, in our job roles, in our attachments.
Totally.
And that's like a really interesting, juicy conversation I wanted to bring today.
Okay, yeah. If I look back into my own background, into my own journey of finding identity, you know, as especially as a man, you know, you want to prove yourself to the world and become something just to feel whole, you know. So I initially started as a soldier, I was a TA soldier. I then moved on to become a prison officer, and I finally achieved my dream job as a firefighter. And that for me was like so fulfilling because I have all these labels now. I have all this identification of who I am or who I'm not, you know, and then out of nowhere, of course, as a young age, I suffered with so much anxiety, depression, you know, and of course I had accidents, I had relationships, family members that passed away, and all these things just bashed my identity also, you know, because like they're constantly on change, and we're always looking for this groundness or this thing that we want to grab, we want to catch, and we want to feel, okay, this is who I am, you know, and the first thing that we do is look for a job, you know, or basically a relationship, because now you're a partner, you're something, you know, you have a role to do. And unfortunately, one of the things that I had to leave the fire brigade because I had PTSD, you know, so I had no other choice but to leave it, you know. So out of nowhere, I didn't have any identification to all the things I had, no attachments. So that's when I went into basically therapy, and at the same time I realized I was having an identity crisis, you know. I was like, okay, who am I now? And I was asking all these questions. All my life I've been working towards this goal to become a firefighter, and now out of nowhere it's gone. It's like, who am I? So this question is something that I started asking myself, who am I? And I started reading different philosophies, different cultures, especially first one that came into my life was about the Hindu philosophy, and the first thing that they do is like, one of the questions is, who am I? You know, and I was like, okay. And that's when I started meditating, you know, going deep searching. I went to this Vipassana, it's called Vipassana, it's a 10-day silent retreat, yeah. So you cannot speak, you cannot read, you cannot write, you wake up at 4 a.m. and you do 10 hours of meditation daily. And one of the things that the Hindu philosophy says that you're not your body, you're not your mind, immortal self I am. And they identify as a soul. So really, like, is this who you are? And Amber is not the body, is not your name, no? So it's like this soul searching of looking for something deeper beyond your identification and your labels. And basically the process of Vipassana is where basically you're lowering your brain waves, you're going into your subconscious, and you're basically releasing all identifications, all past traumas that's stuck in your fascia, in your body when you're scanning. And on my 6th day, I had an out-of-body experience, you know, so my body was literally in front of me and I was observing my body from above, and I'm like, okay, I'm more than just my name, my body, what I've been told, you know, because society tends to also push upon you who you're meant to be or what you're meant to be doing, and you start with school and then you have to do this subject, and like, I don't want to do this subject, I'm more than just this, no? Then you have to look for a job that's stable, that's secure, that has a pension, and it's like, but this is still something not really worth reaching all this expansive of who I am, no? It's like, I'm gonna say it's closing my expansive, no? It's like I'm keeping myself small in one identity when I'm more than just that. So I realized there was like another path into this journey, into realizing who I am, who I'm not, and values, also finding your values. And after this meditation retreat, I realized like also my senses became very brighter. So the connection to myself, with nature, with my intuition, I could hear the wind, the waves coming from far away, the colors became brighter. We became a bit destructive after that, because whilst on my outer body experience, I was told the things that I had to do to heal. And one of them was I had to heal the relation with myself, I had to heal the relation with my parents, and I had to leave the fire brigade. So when I got back, I thought, okay, the easiest thing to do is leave the fire brigade.
It's something tangible, right?
Exactly.
When you talk about having to heal yourself, like that's the most intangible thing ever, and it's a never-ending quest into this void of who am I if I am not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that nothingness of now this thing that I was, that I identified with, my qualifications, my job, my role, my relationship, it's gone.
Yeah.
There is nothing, and there is like a deep sadness or a depression or a grief to that as well.
Totally, because really, like also something we spoke on the phone is like the truth is everything's impermanent. There's nothing that stays the same forever. And that's the hardest truth for someone to accept. Maybe today you're a mother, and maybe tomorrow you lose your child. Today you're a brother, and maybe tomorrow no. Maybe you have and all these identifications, that we identify with, which are tangible, that they are present. But the truth is that it's not going to be there forever. And we find some sense of identity with this label that we think is gonna be there, and then it's like maybe tomorrow you lose it. You have money, and then tomorrow you lose the money. You have you're a firefighter or any other kind of role, and next day you can lose it. So it's like, where do you find your sense of self in something that's not permanent? Something that can be beyond these labels, these identities, and these attachments that they're always flowing and changing. And that's where really you find your groundness, your sense of wealth. And then, like in my own personal journey, after I left the fire brigade, I had this psychosis, I had this existential crisis that I went through, and I was bedbound for nearly 5 months, because I had leaky gut, I had fibromyalgia, I had hyperglycemia, all at the same time.
Autoimmune disease,
exactly.
All these things.
Lupus, it was all and I'm like, I didn't want to be alive anymore. I was lucky enough. I always say that life always sustains me and supports me when I need something. And I got sent this beautiful soul, this girl, that she also went through something similar, and it was a godsend. I'm so grateful for her to be able to come into my life at the right time, and she helped me basically to construct a vegan raw diet and broth. Broth is medicine, but vegan broth. It was vegan broth, so it was 24 hours cooked, like a vegetable cooked 24 hours, and all this medicine healed me, saved me. Yeah, totally. And then after that, I got to a point, I met my ex-girlfriend, where she introduced me more into the animal therapy. And also I worked with equine therapy with horses. We had the donkey, we had the dogs. And that was also another beautiful journey of connecting with other parts of yourself. So really all is one, and when you realize you can see a spark of yourself in someone else, you realize why can't you hurt someone else, or you can hurt an animal, or even a plant. We don't realize how everything is connected to one thing. And when you walk in this life differently, after this transition and I broke up with my ex, I spent 2 years living in the Americas, and I was living with the Mayans, I was living with the Native Americans in Sedona in Arizona, I was living with indigenous tribes in Colombia, and I got initiated by them to give ceremonies, cacao ceremonies. And they have a very beautiful thing that they say, nature is part of you, it's part of yourself, it's oneness. And every time you go out into
nature, right?
Yeah, of course, exactly. And it's every time you go into nature, ask for permission. If you're gonna go to the sea, take an offering. Take an intention, and ask for permission for you to be able to go and step into the land, or step into the forest, or go into the sea. And this basically opened up something else in me, and it was like, okay, we don't even know how expansive we are, and we're just limiting ourselves to this body and to this is just nothing. It's here today.
Taught to be, and all the stories. I think more than anything, it's stories, right? It's narratives around what we create in our minds of where our worth lies.
Yeah.
And I think something you mentioned is that connection to nature. What I hear you say is it just reminds you there is so much more, and we are part of everything.
Yeah.
And actually, there is a consciousness for everything, and the water speaks back, and the earth speaks back, and you feel it in your body, and there is this we had someone else interview and we spoke about grounding, and it's how you give to the earth and the earth gives back to you with permission.
Totally.
And it does remind us that there is something like deeper and greater than what we think that we are.
Yeah.
And we're in that connection.
And even like cacao is something that the Mayans use because it's a heart opening.
I love it.
You know, and cacao, if you're very sensitive and you're open to it, you'll feel it. Yeah, especially after being like, I used to be like working with shamans, and basically we used to preparing ceremonies. We used to spend like 3-4 hours in a ceremony, you know, we used to drumming. Because the drumming, what it does is it regulates your heartbeats. So basically, depending how you're drumming, your heartbeat is beating faster, slower, and that's allowing for the blood to beat faster, and then the medicine is going faster into your system. Open other parts of your brain to be able to realize who you are, you know, and like I always say, my grandmother gave me a key, and with this key, I was looking in houses, in people, in jobs, and I didn't realize that this key was for myself, you know, and what this key represents is love. You know, people tend to look for love outside of themselves, and we realize love is not, it's something who you are, it's who you are, you know, and when you stop looking outside of yourself and you realize you start looking within yourself, this love just expands, you know, and it's not lacking, it's there, I mean, it's whole, it's present, and it's now. And when you can live from that, you know, it's life-changing, it's game-changing, and yeah, you just flow. You know, you flow through life, you get supported at the right time, right place, you know, synchronicities happen, and it's
Doors open.
Doors open.
Yeah.
Because you have a key now, which is love. You know, if you can approach everyone with his love.
Yourself included.
Exactly. Oh, well, initially, that's the first one. Yeah. You can never give from an empty cup, you know, you cannot give what you don't have, you know. Sometimes that's why I say, like, there's a difference between giving and sharing. Because if you give and unconsciously, you're waiting something in return. But if you know who you are, you know that you're source, you know that you're abundant, and know that everything emanates through you.
You give limitlessly.
You share who you are, so you don't expect anything in return, you know. So yeah, it was an interesting journey of knowing identity. You know, identity can be something that is ever changing. You know, I'm now an artist, and I will work with mental health. But for me, I've come to a place of play. You know, it's like I'm playing, I'm having
Which
fun.
Is a true spiritual lesson, by the way.
Yes, totally.
Because we forget a lot what it's like to be in that joy. Because that is the essence of abundance, right? Pleasure, joy, happiness.
It's like we're not here to work. You know, we're here to be ourselves. Of course, the system exists, and it has a whole different story about it. We can go into it, but I'll leave that for another day. But yeah, you mean like if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, you know. And unfortunately, there's nothing bad with money either, you know, because it's an energy, you know, and it's something that needs to be shared yeah, I mean, it's just another part of you, just in physical essence, you know.
I think a lot of people might struggle with the whole aspect of how to actually access that love from within. And when they are in this bottomless place, this void of lack of identity, it's like, where do I turn?
Okay.
You know, what is the next step? I think a lot of that is beginning to explore, okay, who am I when I am not all of this?
Okay.
What is my expression in this moment? What are my emotions in this moment? What are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? And accepting them in totality, right? With that love.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of the gateway to people in that void knowing how to navigate that. Because in being able to explore and understand yourself and be in compassion and in love, that opens these potentials and these gateways.
Totally. You can get lots of advice. People can tell you this, can tell you that. You can read as much as you want. But at the end of the day, it's your own path, you know, it's your own journey. And I feel like for me personally, like the quickest way to find authenticity and truth is exploring the arts in any way. You know, you can write, you can sing, you can paint, you can dance and act. You know, all these different ways of expressing your own true self in different ways is being authentic. And I can recommend is just explore the arts and work with all different things. Find your expression, find your truth in all this stuff. That's a step, you know. So the arts, it's the biggest, it's medicine. It's dance. I've always been someone that loved dance, and now I'm exploring it more. You know, that's why I moved to London, because the opportunities there are endless in terms of what. Today you want to sing, you go to a singing class. You know, tomorrow you want to write, you go to a writing. I mean,
because you're open, right? You're open to the possibility and the potential that's available.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I wish I should have come before into my life. But look, it was during COVID that this thing happened to me when I left the fire brigade, and I couldn't move from my bed. And that's when I started painting. Yeah. And now I paint, I draw, you know, and I brought colors into my life. And then from there, then I moved on to other things. And now I'm acting also in London. This is what I'm doing. And it's just the capacity to be able to express all parts of yourself without identifying. So acting, you see an actor and it can be anything. Not all actors, but you see like the most famous actors, they can play any different roles. They have the capability of being able to be moldable, to try any different, you can go into anger, you can go into fear, you can go into joy, you can go into like comedy. And these parts of you, you know, is accessible to be able to play with it. You don't identify with it anymore. It's like, okay, anger comes in, I can play with it, I can express it in a scene, and then you can let it go, you know. But that's very important, like regulation. Many actors end up losing their self because they don't know who they are. They are lost in so many identities that they've played through their career in acting that they've never actually explored who they truly are. So then they're lost. So they never know where to go back to themselves. And there's something very cool that the Mayans do, is that they bury their placenta in their back garden. Why? Because every time they feel lost, they go back home. And they say that Westerners are lost because they don't know where their placenta is.
Love that.
And they have since a young age, they have a pure sense of identity, which is more rooted in the soul than with
the human
material, you know, so which is constantly moving. And also the Mexicans also have this thing called the tonal, which also is another part of their horoscope and their ways of identifying with who they truly are, you know, and moving into the purpose as a young age, you know, because they always say, no, look, you should, as a kid, it's like, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's like, maybe this is not what I want to do, you know, this is not what really calls me. So yeah, the journey of identifying who you are, it's a process, you know, it can be long, it can be short. We're all, like, paths are many, and truth is one. Yeah. You know, so when someone goes around this mountain, you have another perspective, you have another experience. I go through this side, and you have another perspective. And
we're looking at it through our own unique lens.
Exactly, all the time, you know, and your experience, if I would have lived in your experience, I would have had your experience, I would have been the same as you. Like the perspectives is, if you would have lived in my life, I would have had my experiences, you would have been the same as me. So it's something like we all have different experiences that shape everything around you, but it's not who you are.
So I think we've spoken about this whole loss of identity. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate. I can resonate, especially men, because this whole concept of mental health is not spoken about enough.
Yeah.
And when you were struggling with this loss of identity and going through this journey to find yourself again, what are some of those tools or some of those practices that you can recommend for someone else who is navigating that and trying to come back to some kind of center point of, I know who I am beneath all of this?
It was an interesting journey for me personally, you know, because like my business now is called Becoming Truly Conscious. So the journey for me is like becoming conscious of the unconscious, and what things are you doing that's constantly keeping this negative loop of being in fight or flight and stuck in stress, anxiety, and depression for years. You know, I was stuck in
some people.
Yeah, and if your mom was stressed while she was pregnant of you, you have a higher capacity of having stress, anxiety, and depression as an adult. So you already come to the world stressed, you know, without even you wanting to. And then you're born in a family where unfortunately they don't have the tools to know how to regulate, and then you have to learn how to regulate on yourself, you know, like, and I've hit myself against the wall 20 million times. And of course, I can share tools, which always I'm going to do now, but you have to find the tools which work for you. You know, like I can give you different tools, but you find your own truth. Like I always say, like books can tell you things, but you walk the path and find your own truth, you know? So this program that I do takes you through the journey of truly finding yourself, you know, and what I initially started when I had my initial episodes of psychosis and all these things is just moving to nature. Going to nature, walking barefoot in the shore, connecting with the waves, feeling your sand on your feet, feeling your air in your face, and taking in the breath, you know, connecting with your breath, connecting with your lungs, with your shoulders, expanding, opening, and allowing life to come into you, to heal you, you know, and that was like the first thing that came to me, because it was like very intuitive to just like disconnect myself from from being at home.
For someone in a trauma response, that's huge.
Totally.
That's huge.
Yeah,
Automatic.
frequency,
Reset.
energy, vibration. This is what's all around us. This is what we're meant to be surrounded by constantly, daily. You know, like you should look at your house. You know, look at the shapes in your house. It's all squares. Your window, your door, your bed, your television. What do you think that is doing to your mind? You're basically closed. You have a square, closed mindset. Go into nature. You know, so energy doesn't flow in a box space. You go into nature, there's waves, there's nothing in nature that is a straight line.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can expose yourself to these elements, you realize how your body tends automatically to change, you know, and if you breathe deeply, you can see all emotions flowing. Because really, if you see the word emotion, it means energy in motion.
Yeah.
You know, how you're breathing and how you're moving. So nature in itself allows you to slow your pace, to move slower, to speak slower, you know, to breathe in coherence in how you're meant to breathe. You know, because when you're hyperventilating and you're using your apex of your lungs, you're not allowing for the diaphragmatic work to do its job. So you're not allowing for the CO2 exchange in your blood. So there's not enough oxygen in your blood, there's not enough oxygen in your brain. And that's when all these thoughts start increasing, going faster. You go into delta, beta brain waves, you know. So if you start slowing your brain waves, exposing yourself in nature, you go into a theta brain wave. So you're more at ease, more relaxed, and more present, you know. And that was one of the first things I was doing. Then I started doing deep breathing. So deep breathing is something very simple. Simple is basically breathing in for 7 seconds and then breathe out for 11 seconds, just allowing 2 times the breath when you're actually exhaling. No, another one that I do is just breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 8 seconds, and you hold for 2 seconds. But this is something very simple. And then I start taking them through different practices. I basically get to know what are thoughts, you know, what are not thoughts. Are you your thoughts? You know, can you ask questions about your thoughts? You know, can you actually interrogate your thoughts? It's like, why do I have these thoughts? Is it even true? You know, because when you have anxiety, you tend to have a thought, you think it's true, and you ask, what if? Then after what if, it's like, let's pretend. So you're already pretending that whatever you thought is true is going to happen, and you're feeling like the thing that you thought is going to happen. Yeah. You know, like, why am I feeling like this? If this is, you know, it's not going to happen, you know? And from there, I always use cues outside myself to remember, like, to go back to myself. So every time I hear the ambulance, I hear a boy crying, or I hear a dog barking, I use these cues to go back to my breath. Yeah. So if I'm walking down the street and I feel unease, always use these cues to remind yourself about go back to breathing. Or I put an alarm on my phone, and every hour or every 10 minutes, every time you hear the alarm, go back to your breath, you know? And that was something very magical that helped me to bring myself back to the now, to the present, to my breath. And that's what it is, you know, the journey is from here to here. Yeah. And it's all about from thinking to feeling. And the more you can start feeling your surroundings, what's inside of you, it's grounding, you know, and you're allowing space for things to flow. And something I used to do after is called mindful eating. You know, so I used to become present when I'm having a meal. You know, look at the colors, like look at try and smell, get close to your food. You know, if you see like certain cultures, they eat with their hands, you know, and they're connecting with their food. You know, they are realizing how hot the food is. You know, because if you have a fork, if you put it in your mouth and it's hot, you'll burn yourself. You don't know how hot the food is. So all these mindful practices of connecting with the food that you're eating, smelling it, looking at it, look at its textures, and it's all about slowing your pace and bringing yourself back to the present moment. No? So in this program that I do, it's all a journey to return back to yourself.
Coming back to the foundations, coming back to the body, to the breath, to nature, and being part of that cycle again, which is realizing every breath has a cycle, that nature has a cycle, that we have a cycle, and through all cycles, cycles pass and cycles move and cycles change, and we're part of that.
Yes, even the roots is know that everything is constantly changing, and you're the observer of it, you know, and the more you allow space for it, to everything that's constantly changing to be there, you go back to your peace, you know, and know that your breath is always going to be there with you, you know, and it's the most grounding tool you can use anywhere you go. You know, people don't even have to know that you're deep breathing. You know, you can be in a bus, you can be sat anywhere, and just connecting your breath, lowering your breath, connecting with your body is the most grounding tool that helped me to be where I am today in terms of also into any practice. If one athletes, you know, all we don't realize how much it just helps you in everyday thing, work that we do, you know. So
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing.
that's fine. Thank you for having me.
Okay. I love it.